Hey everybody, before we get into the actual webinar, I just wanted to stop real quick and we wanted to share a little bit about why this is so important to you. The fact that you're watching this is awesome because you're going to get a lot of great information. Alyson has some incredible stuff for you. And we're going to get into that in just a minute, but I want to share a little bit of why this is so important. A shout out to Harry, a Semantic Mastery member, and somebody who really gave us the idea for this. And we wanted to share a little bit more about why this is so important. I don't want to steal the thunder, so I'm going to pass this over to Bradley and let him explain a little bit of this. Bradley?
Yeah, so Harry Gilliam was one of our mastermind members, and he watched the webinar with Alyson, and she made an offer at the end to have somebody submit a video or something that they wanted turned into an SOP. And he took her up on her offer and sent her a 14-minute video. And 48 hours later, her team returned a really detailed SOP from that video. And Harry was basically stating, like, he emailed us to tell us about how amazing it was, that it was a little bit higher price than what he was ready for at the moment, but he can see how valuable that is. And I just wanted to kind of expand on that briefly because, I've talked about SOPs for years in Semantic Mastery. It's not fun. It's not sexy. But it's absolutely necessary if you want to grow and scale a business and also remove yourself from the business. If you want to be a true business owner instead of just somebody that's self-employed, you got to be able to remove yourself from the business. And how else do you do that besides automation and delegation? There's no other way to do it. And so SOPs are critically important. And just kind of a personal anecdotal story or whatever as to how powerful SOPs are. I took Semantic Links, my link building business, from 0 to multiple 5 figures per month in revenue in a matter of 6 months or so by just building SOPs. I started 100% from scratch with just myself. Now I have 16 full-time employees. 1 year later, we're exactly 1 year since I started Semantic Links. And within, like I said, I got 16 full-time employees, and it's doing very, very well. And it's all because as I was building that business, I was developing SOPs. So as soon as I learned how to do something, I would develop an SOP and then delegate that so that I could move on to something else. And then I would task whoever I delegated that to make that process more efficient. And my team has done a phenomenal job with me just providing the base SOPs to get them started. And so again, I took a business from $0 to multiple 5 figures per month within a matter of about 6 months by just building SOPs. It's not fun, but it's absolutely critical if you want to build a business. So I would encourage you guys to take this very, very seriously, or you can just go chase the next shiny object. It's entirely up to you.
Chris, how about you? What do you got to say on this?
Right. Bradley pretty much stole most of the thunder, but like the one thing where I always say like SOPs are like invaluable. And once they're written, and like even if you're still writing them, it's like when you have like a really good day where you get a lot of things done, and the bad day, or like you went out the night before and literally nothing gets done. But if you have written SOPs and like you have a plan and everything goes done, right? Everything gets done. So like, because you have a team doing things, you have like for yourself, for every one of your employees, everyone who is involved in the chain, you have an SOP. And everyone knows what to do today, tomorrow, the whole month, this week. And that's really where it's, in my opinion, absolutely invaluable, because you're not waking up without like, yeah, like I'm just going to do what I thought I could do tomorrow, because you sat down and wrote down a plan the next day, the evening before, which is like what many people in our industry teach, right? But like, that's what you can do like on a very small level. But if you really want to run a business on like a bigger level and have two systems, this like gives you an absolutely crazy boost. Like I can highly recommend it.
Definitely. All right. So we're going to jump right into the webinar from here. Whether you want to scale, whether you want to remove yourself from the business, whether you want to build to sell, all of these are fantastic reasons for this. So let's just get into it with Alyson.
I didn't have this. There we go, going. Wow. So wanted to go ahead and record it, but I was just telling everybody, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, do all the fun stuff. I'm traveling. Sweet. This couldn't have worked out better in a hilariously bad way. I just got an email while I was at dinner, and it's from a brand new client. I broke my own rules for onboarding them. I did not follow my SOP, and it's been dragging on for months. I started dealing with them in August. Don't want to name names, do anything like that. And it has just turned into this total train wreck where tomorrow I have to get on a call with them, and I was like doing some journaling stuff this morning, and I'm like, yes, the very best thing that I'm putting off is firing this client. And I'm really bummed because my team has invested time into it. I've invested time into it. And now I have to let them go. And it's not even a cathartic, like, yay. It's just like, oh, I ignored my own rules and now I get to pay the price. So anyways.
I'm sorry you're learning that the hard way right now. I hope that's for everyone listening. I hope that's encouraging and not discouraging, is that if you put the processes in place and follow them, it can protect you against some of these really challenging pitfalls in business.
So much. And my wife was like, yeah, you know, make sure you don't say this, don't do that. And I was like, no, I appreciate it. Thanks for being my sounding board. But like, I just really need to get the bad stuff out right now so that I can be a better person tomorrow.
Gotta just get all the junk out. Yeah,
this is the stuff I'm not going to tell the client. This is the stuff they'll never hear. They're not bad people. It's just been, you know, it's my fault too. I let them do this and I shouldn't have. So yeah, so with that, I guess kind of hopping into it, Alyson, I'm just really glad to have you here. Of course, anyone who's here and the people who will be joining or seeing the replay have seen the email, seen something about you, but I was gonna be like, what should I say about Alyson? You know, she's a founder of this, she's worked with these types of clients, but I'm generally of the opinion, I would like to hear it from you, and I'm sure they would too, a little bit more. Do you mind just kind of jumping in and telling people about yourself?
Yeah, totally. So I'm Alyson Caffrey. I'm the founder of Operations Agency, mom to two very little boys, so under 3. I have really staked my claim in being the documentation expert in the digital services world. I've been in business for 5.5 years, and we've prepped, you know, service businesses, mostly agencies, for a multitude of different types of terrain, right, throughout their business development path. So we've prepped, you know, exits, we've prepped franchise opportunities, we've prepped multiple locations, we prep launches of new services and products, you know, change of regime in the leadership, all of those things, right? And I think ultimately what it comes down to is that my passion is for serving businesses to help them operate better, and ultimately to return the founder fulfilled and back to their family, because I know that we all don't live in a silo. We're not just running this business in something that doesn't exist outside of us or outside of our family. And the more that we can kind of create this thing that other people can help function without us, right, without the founder, the more successful the business is going to be, the more jobs we will create, the more impact we'll have in the world, and the more present we can be at home with our family and spending time taking care of ourselves. So that's why I do this. That's my background kind of professionally and personally. Obviously, like I said, this need is huge. Like I have 2 little boys under 3. And so I'm constantly reassessing, like, how is my time worth the most? And like, how can I operationalize things in my life and in my business to be able to have this? And documentation is 100% the foundational piece and just like the ultimate core of everything that we do at the agency.
And I don't want to undersell it, but we have a, I don't know, we mentioned this a lot, and I feel bad saying it because it's not true, but we always say like the SOPs aren't sexy. Like it's not the thing, right? That people are like, ooh, I want to go do this, but it underpins everything that we do. My partner, Bradley, for the people who are listening on the webinar today and participating are going to know, you know, he talks about it. He's just like, yeah, I spent, you know, 20 hours this week documenting or building SOPs. And he's like, I don't enjoy it, but he's like, every time I do this, right, the company grows, or you know, I get another employee who's self-managed, things like that. So that's the way we always say it, is just like, yeah, it may be tough up front, but the gains are just so huge in all ways, time, money, energy, that it's so worth it. So at least that's why I'm excited you're here. Did I miss anything? Is there some other reasons that people should be excited?
Well, no, all the things that you're mentioning, right? I think ultimately, right, at the end of the day, and let's just like get like nice and, you know, high in the sky here, some 30,000 foot perspective, like doing hard things or things that people are otherwise unwilling to do is what successful people do every day, day in and day out. And I think that for every founder you show me who says, I love this documentation, this is really setting me free, this is really transforming my life, I'll show you 30 to 50 other founders who are like, I'm not naturally good at documentation, so I'm just not going to do it. And so I think that ultimately, if we can challenge ourselves, if even just one thing today while we're working through this is, even if it doesn't come naturally to you, just submit and say, I don't know how to do this well, but I'm going to commit to at least a process on writing processes to maybe see if this could work for me and see if I can kind of unlock unlock some of the benefits here. So I think even just be able and willing to do things that folks wouldn't otherwise do in order to grow your business. And that has usually met me with some pretty significant success, even if it's unsexy, right? Like it's super unsexy to get up at 6 in the morning and like hit the gym when it's cold. It's not fun. Everyone's like all bundled up, but ultimately, right, you know, it's an investment into your overall longevity. And so I think we can start to view procedures and process of writing like this.
Awesome. All right. Well, Alyson, can you tell us kind of what we're going to do? And then I guess, yeah, I'm happy to get to it unless you got anything else you want to cover.
So I'm going to walk through some really core key concepts around just kind of anchoring us in choosing a really successful process. Some of the prep material and the things that we were talking about kind of in registration kind of keyed us to that. So if you guys, everybody listening, like if you do have like a process in mind, like keep it there, but then we can kind of run it through this filter and see like, is this maybe the thing that we need to be doing? So if you don't mind, can I grab the screen, Adam, and I'll just kind of walk through a couple of key concepts. And then what we can do together is we'll spend probably the first like 15-ish minutes going through some of these concepts. I'll show you guys how to break some things down. Get like a scratch pad out, or I'm like a huge iPad fan. So if you're doing that sort of thing, just like take some notes and write out some of the things that might be true for you. And what we'll do then is help you decide, okay, what do we need to be working on like during the workshop period of this session together, right? What SOP are we going to be working on together? And then that will help me help you get that thing done. The other really interesting thing is I'll show you guys how to fold your time in a way that makes SOP creation feel really natural in your schedule, so that you don't have to like chunk out additional time in your day to feel like you're getting this done. You can kind of overlap it with your existing schedule.
Let's see, Alyson, are you able to share yet? I may have to make you host. I don't know why I have such a hard.
No. If you have the security option, you can you don't have the
Yeah, this is
option.
super fun. Let me take a look because I'm on my laptop.
worries.
Speaking of processes, this is good. I actually need this. I'm on my Chromebook, which is different than my desktop. So I will be writing down how I made this work. I'm just going to make you host.
I have to practice with my iPad so much.
Right? There we go. I'm going to make you host. So hopefully you can do it from your end. If not, let me know and we will dig into it.
Can.
All right, cool.
Here we go. Let me know if y'all can see my
I have it. Let's see if everyone else.
Hey guys, I have my chat open too. So like, I know that a lot of times, you know, as we start breaking down core concepts and things, like I teach this all the time. And so if you guys start to have questions and things, let me know. But this isn't meant to be just like a let's hammer a bunch of information down your throat. This is meant to be like a let's collaborate on the best ways to arrive at the best SOP to be writing for not only our time, but also for ROI, right? We want to make sure that we're getting a lot of the low-hanging fruit off of our plates. So let's talk about this. You guys know about me. I also have a really interesting channel, a YouTube channel called 3-Minute Ops Tips. Why is my pin not working?
It's like, I will grab that link and unless you have it and pop it in there, I'm going to go find it.
I'll pop it in. Super interesting because there's a library of topics in there too. Like they're 3 minutes, prohibitively short, just so that you can like grab some really cool information. So basically what we do is we just help owners get their most impactful work down on paper. And big problems here are no clear processes that leads to messy tools, and then everything is urgent and custom. We already kind of talked about this. We're going to create a documentation system, repeatable outcomes, and then create some alignment between team members. This is my family. I love spending time with them. Processes help me do that is kind of the biggest, the biggest thing that we want to, sorry, 1 second. I just got a notification that I was about to be signed out of Zoom, which would be detrimental. Okay, so 3 big things we're going to talk about to help you arrive at the best process to be writing. So what we want to do is have a consistent feedback loop. And really what this is meant to do is assess what you're doing, what might need to come off of your plate. Then we're going to talk about the best efforts to document. And what this is going to be is the screencast method. Then we're going to talk about the metrics, how you can track this, how to make sure that team is utilizing it, and make sure that this is actually successful, because I know a ton of agency owners and specifically creative agencies that create processes in a way that if they didn't take a look at some of the measurable outcomes, right, the process is so creative that it's actually really difficult to kind of do this like step-by-step procedure, right? It's a little bit more nebulous. And so having things anchored inside of a metric-based system is going to be really helpful for you. So let's talk about the assessment loop. Really what we want to do is we want to, and this is the entire kind of theory behind this, is we basically have three big things that contribute to our operations. We have our people, we have our systems, and what I mean by this is like how we set up our technology operationally, and then we have our process. And a lot of founders live here, right? They live right in the middle, and they're managing the people, they're managing the process, and everything trickles down through them, and they're updating the systems or their own project manager, all of those things. Now, if instead what we can do is remove you from the center of this here, and we want to create a system for teaching the people how to do the things, and teaching the things how to interact in the systems, and teach the systems how to support the people, right? Make their tasks more automated, all of those things. And so then what we've created is kind of a flywheel inside of our business, instead of something that literally counts on us at the circle and inside of the circle to basically run that. And so the way that we kind of conceptually break this down, this is a really, really cool exercise from a mentor of mine. His name's Dan Martell. He talks about the buyback rate. And basically what the buyback rate is, and he has an amazing book that just launched like last week. It's called Buy Back Your Time. It's incredible. Absolutely read it. I just devoured it in like a day, and it's just wonderful. The concepts are incredible.
Gonna have to hop on that. Sorry, I just was talking to somebody else, and this is a second recommendation in like a week. So yep.
Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. So this is a really great way, and we've been teaching a version of this, but his is actually really, really impactful. And I literally was sitting here thinking, I was like, Dan, because I sent him a message and I was like, dude, I'm going to teach this on like my upcoming stuff, like immediately starting now. He's like, great. I love it. So how much your company pays you divided by 2,000 hours. And then he always wants you to get 4x your ROI on something like this, right? So let's just say you get paid 80 grand from your company. 2,000 hours is about $40 an hour. So you want to outsource this for about $10, right? At some point that this will make sense for you. This is data entry. This is documentation of processes. This is, you know, at times, right, probably project management. And Dan and I think similarly, and I love this concept, but also too, like if it doesn't light you up and it doesn't make you super excited to jump out of bed in the morning, I'm cool with you offering to offload it for the $40 an hour rate and just getting 1x investment and then up leveling yourself in the business. So this is a really solid way. Again, we've been doing this, a version of this for a while, but I think that this is a really great way to start to think through, like, what can I afford to offload and what types of tasks might be, you know, included in this like first round of documentation, or what process am I going to document today that's going to help me, you know, do some of these things. Think like administrative onboarding, right? Like setting up projects, not even just the management stuff, right? Because your client management things might be a little bit more costly in terms of somebody who can communicate with clients and those types of things. But when we start to think of like the administrative throughput of your involvement in the business, really start to take a notice of some of the things that you're working on there, especially too, if you're managing your own calendar or you're doing your inbox right now, guys, $10 an hour task, 100%. If we have a good system for that, we have a good process for how we're charting things on the calendar and how we're responding to emails, this is absolutely something we can get off of our plate. So mind your calendar. Open up your calendar now, if you're listening, and be in a position to just take a look objectively at some of the things that you have on your calendar. If you have administrative onboarding, if you're running those, like, you know, first initial calls with your clients to like run through and make sure, did you do your intake form? Did you pay your invoice? Did you do some of those other things? Like, mind your calendar and take a look, like, how did I spend my last week? And if you're watching this and you're like, man, I'm not really that scheduled and I don't really have a lot of stuff on my calendar, sort of think through how you can do like a time study of, okay, over the next couple of days. And I've known people who set out to do this for a week or two and then find a ton of insight in like 3 or 4 days. And they're like, wow, okay, I didn't realize actually how much time I was spending inside of my inbox. This is insane. If I could get another 15 hours back of my time for $10 an hour to just have somebody manage this, then for some, it just unlocks incredible potential. So this is number one, mind your calendar. And if you take a look at some of these things, here's what I want you to think about. I want you to think about a traffic light system or coding the work that you're doing, right? And so really what we want to do is we want to take a look at what are the big things to delegate. And I'll explain why I separate these in a second. So we have the delegate piece, we have the document piece, and we have the actual to-do list, right? Because you're not going to completely be able to offload every single thing from your list, right? We have to make sure that it makes financial sense for us and workflow sense for us. So delegate means it's documented already. Means it's documented. It means that when you delegate it to somebody, and I always like to use the 80%, like it's going to come back to you 80% of the way done, because that to me is still successful, right? If you can get something 80% off of your plate and then come back in and just like put the bow on things and add your touch, especially in your service business, that's going to be huge. Document is the things that you need to record your screen, which we will talk about here with the screencast method in a second. And then your to-do list is just that, right? To do in and of itself. And this needs to be reassessed. Meaning that every single quarter, every single month, something like that, we take this and we do another time study to say, okay, based on the up leveling of my organization in the last 6 months, I'm going to go through my to-do list again and make sure that I understand that there's a constant reassessment of how I'm spending my time and what my input is to the agency so that I can make sure to get things documented. Half of the battle, honestly, transparently, probably like 80% of the battle is having a clear list of things to document, because I think a lot of owners want documentation, but they don't necessarily understand where to get it. And so they start documenting easy things like how to route phone calls or how to book on calendars and things that are like generally like low barrier tasks, which is definitely some place I think, again, to start, right? We want to make sure to get it off your plate. But like Dan says in his book, which is just so profound, he's like, hire back for the founder's time. Don't hire just to hire somebody, or because you think you need a marketing manager, or because you think you need an assistant, or because you think you need whatever. If you really start with the founder's time, you can understand that a lot of apparent, like what you're doing is maybe in deliverables of client services. And so you need somebody else with a specific skill set that you have, right? Or you might be in a position where you're super disorganized with your calendaring. So you might actually need a person who can come in and help you be more organized, i.e. an assistant, a project manager, something like that. So just think through coding this work.
Alyson,
So
real quick, you mentioned, doing the, it's like monthly, quarterly. Do you recommend for people? Because I mean, I find for myself, one of the hardest things is I can come up with a process. I can do this. I'm fairly organized, but I've found it's repetition, right? It's a habit. I've got to do this. Is it just what works? Set a reminder? Do you have anything you just say like, hey, just if nothing else, just put a reminder, do it every month, or I don't know.
Yeah.
How would you recommend going about this?
I love quarterly because ultimately, like, let me just draw y'all another picture. Ultimately, when we operate as a business, we've got this baseline here for just all of the things that we're doing. And if we split this, we've got our SOPs, so the standard way that we operate. And then we have our goals. And so these are like new projects. And so at a baseline, this is what needs to happen. Then we have like our people. And then we have like our strategy. Like operationally, right? That's like how basically the 3 levels work, at least in my experience. And so like these 2 things need to constantly be in conjunction with one another, SOPs and goals, because what we don't want to do is we don't want to service our goals so much that the core functions of the way we operate fall off. And we don't want to serve the core functions of the way we operate so much that over time we start to dwindle and die because we don't have any new goals. We're only just focused on what is, right? And so those 2 things need to be in conjunction with one another. I recommend quarterly planning at the very least in terms of new goals, new initiatives. And part of that quarterly planning at the very least is to reassess, are the core functions of our business operating in a way that makes sense to us? If not, then we need to chunk that out as a project for this quarter to get that figured out. And so a lot of the reassessment loop comes at least quarterly. I also personally like to just every time I feel like I've had a crappy week, I do this exercise. If I start to feel like a victim to my calendar, I'm like, I'm going to do this really fast because I'm going to take a look and I'm be like, what happened this week? Did I honor the way that I currently block my calendar? Is this a problem for me letting things creep in? Is my assistant not doing her job? Like, how is that working? And then what we need to do is just isolate for those issues and be like, okay, we need to basically recommit that I'm going to be doing this, right? It's the same way that like you feel like you're in really good shape. And then all of a sudden you might take a few days off over the holidays and then you like fall into bad habits. And then you're like, okay, wait, why am I sleeping like crap? And you're like, okay, I didn't get any sunlight today, right? Let's start there. Let's start drinking some more water. And so we like start to build back to basics. And so I think it's really helpful to have this feedback loop very consistently.
Gotcha.
All right. We talked about the feedback loop. Now we're going to talk about documentation. Screencast method. Super exciting stuff. For the most part, what this is at a high level is a way to create your to-do list, quote unquote, in the coded method that I just mentioned before, and then overlap the times where you're working on actual tasks with recording your screen, and that can provide a baseline for documentation. So that's basically it. You have your task list. Right now, something that you can do, and for sure as homework for this session, if you don't already, get loom.com on your Chrome extension or whatever it is that you're using for your browser. I have found that this has saved me so much time in my business to be able to just really quickly say, hey, listen, this is how I'm doing this. And then I submit it over to my team to get documented. It's super, super, super simple. And then what you want to do is you want to show these completion filters, or we call them definitions of done. Super simple. Just say, hey, listen, I'm going to set up this new client and onboard them into our project management tool. Let's just say, for example, definitions of done is that they have the full scope. They've been added to our forecast, or like however you're tracking financials. They have their content added, like whatever you're grabbing from your like onboarding systems and things like that, intake form, right? We have all of access to their visuals and all the things. And so really what you want to do is create that list of non-negotiables, because my opinion is that even if somebody can follow along and watch you on your screen and then they see the end product, even if they like really haven't been paying attention while you're like walking through on the screen stuff, at the very least, they can be like, okay, I know that these are the definitions of done. The amazing part about this too is that you can really create some buy-in from your team to say, hey, listen, actually, I really understand that this is the way that you want this outcome to look, but I found a quicker way to do this, or I found a better way to do this. And it helps kind of that as well at scale to foster some of that leadership and some of that ownership inside of your team. Ultimately, Google is literally successful because it's a centralized hub for information that has ding, 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 lots of contributors, right? Like we don't want to be just the only person who is doing some of these things inside of our business. And so what we want to really create here is a culture, a process culture. We want to say, hey, look, not only is this important, not only am I going to be doing this, right, as the founder, and it's going to trickle down into my team, but you should be empowered to come to me and say, hey, Alyson, here's the deal. You've hired me to do this thing, and I've been doing a ton of data entry. Would it be possible if I could just create a process and then we could transfer this task over to so-and-so on our team, or if we could take a look at maybe hiring a new person to take this over? What you want are these suggestions, and what you want are multiple hands in the pot to help you create this documentation system, thus further removing you from that Venn diagram of operations that we talked about in the very beginning. And the Google mentality really is getting things out of people's brains and into a searchable, systematic thing that folks feel like that they can access, right? And implant into their own brains, right? How many times have we been like, Google, how many cups are in a quart? Right? Like it's literally it's a fact, it's a thing, but then we have 900 different ways to tell us based on our own personality style or whatever we want to have, how many cups are in a quart with the practical applications of these. And so what you want to do is you want to build your hive mind, right? Build a thing that could maybe even function on its own, that is a multiple contributor facet of how you're operating. So your contribution comes in here, and then we've got your team's contribution, we've got your external contractors contribution, we've got your client's feedback. All of those things are building this hive mind that feels really, really collaborative, and then it can operate without you. So we talked about feedback loop, we talked about documentation and some of the best ways to go about facilitating that. Let's talk about metrics, and then we'll really get to it. So like any great endeavor, right? Losing weight, physical fitness, growing your business. What we want to do is we want to determine some of the measures of success. And I think that if we don't do a lot of those things, what ultimately ends up happening is first of all, we forget why we're doing it, right? Like how many times like you have a goal or a dream or something like that, and then maybe you like surpass that goal, or it becomes a little bit distant and you're like, why am I even doing this? My hope is that with not only the buyback rate, but also implanting some of these metrics and measures about how you are helping your community, how you're helping your clients, we can be in a position to really anchor this in value and vision versus just monotony and mundane, because that's sometimes what it feels like. So the very first thing to do is to establish your baseline. And I love using example of client onboarding. And if you haven't quite arrived just by looking at your calendar over the last couple of minutes we've been talking here, if you haven't arrived at like what your process is going to be, perhaps client onboarding is a good one to begin with, because I think that ultimately what ends up happening and showing up for a lot of the agency owners that I talk to is that they feel that when they say yes to new business, it means that they're saying yes to time on their calendar, which is probably true for a lot of new agency owners or agency owners who haven't quite like figured out how to like really harness this yet, is that they're in a position where they're like, if I close this new client, it means that I'm going to need to stay up a little bit later. I'm going to need to wake up a little bit earlier. I'm going to need to miss soccer practice or whatever it is true for you. And it's really challenging to figure this out before we establish a baseline. So for example, like how long does it take you to onboard a new client, right? So like onboarding, if I could write today, that'd be super helpful. So like how long does it take you to onboard? How long, like, or how long does it, or how often are you keeping clients? So like client retention. How often are you doing the same projects? Right? So like how many different things are you offering? Are those things plug and play? Those types of things, right? What you want to do is you want to establish a baseline. So I love sticking with this onboarding example because I think this is probably one of the biggest ways that we can save our agency time and money and really decrease administrative friction is getting clients in and on to experience strategy or some of our results as quickly as humanly possible. So let's just say, for example, in this agency, like it takes 10 days to onboard a new client, right? From like gathering all of their data and having the onboarding call and getting some of the, things returned to them and having the strategy and all of that stuff. So what you want to do is just be super objective about that and then create a goal, right? What do you want to do? Do you want to decrease that by 2 days on average? That's wonderful. 2 days on average over the next couple of quarters, right? You can kind of decrease that all over time. You're trending in the right direction. You don't want to not have a baseline and then be in a position where you say, oh, I want to onboard a client in 2 days. And then you just like set yourself up for complete failure and your team up for complete failure. And then you don't know exactly what's happening here. So as you're like thinking through what exactly you're going to work through from a process wise during our time today, I think it's super important to start thinking through, okay, what is that baseline? I know a lot of the questions might be, well, like, what if I don't know? Like, what if I have no idea how long it takes me to onboard a client? I would say, take a look again at your calendar or take a look at, like when they paid you to when you felt like you had the very first deliverable. A rough baseline is better than no baseline at all, in my opinion, because then we're really just throwing things up against the wall and seeing if they're sticking.
And I was going to say that's a good problem to have because it's really easy to figure out. So
exactly. Okay. And then we want to measurably track this over time. So something that's just, let's just say, for example, you have the 10-day issue of onboarding clients. You want to see that decrease by 2 days. How can we realistically measure this? And how can we put it in front of our team in a way that feels really accessible? Meaning that every time we get a new client, we're measuring the process itself and saying, okay, did everything get done? How long did that take us? And then just put a simple in a spreadsheet, very simple. Just put a metric in there for every time you onboard a new client. Have your project manager do that, or whoever it is who's helping you administratively with some of these things. And then really what it will do is it'll anchor this, this metric and make sure like, okay, listen, we think this is really important. A lot of times too, when we start to measure things, we start to die off and then the team wonders like, is this actually still very important to the founder? And the answer is yes. And I think that ultimately that's why things don't end up becoming improved the way that they might be if the founder were to kind of keep this metric top of mind. And again, all in service of building a process culture. I've found this wholeheartedly easily managing teams is that if you put a metric in front of them and you tell them, hey, listen, what do we feel like we need to improve about our process in order to get there? They come to the table with ideas. They don't, get presented this metric and say, hey, listen, in my brain, I thought it'd be awesome if this quarter you could onboard clients faster. And now I'm presenting you with the information that you didn't do that. They like immediately go on the defensive and they're like, no, I'm not gonna, whatever. It's just harder. It really is. And I think ultimately what we want to do is build this process culture inside of our business. So really quick, elements of a great process, which I'm super excited about here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to crack open a Google document and we're going to start working through this. And so if you have a process that you're working on, as I'm kind of talking through the elements here, I want you guys to just maybe drop it in the chat, just so that I know like some of the things that we're working on. So as I'm giving extended examples, I can just use some of the things that folks are actually working on to honestly just deliver you guys more value. So pull it in the chat, and I also have just opened the Q&A. So if there's any questions, please, please, please let me know as I'm kind of walking through this. Onboarding, yeah, love it. Onboarding is amazing, honestly, because it's just like, there's all this fear sometimes, right, around like closing new business. And you're just, if you know that onboarding is taken care of and that the process is frictionless and you're going to kick off this relationship really well, it's like going out on a date and then like inviting somebody into your messy car and you're like, yeah, I wanna, and you're like pushing everything around. And it's really hard, right? Because you feel like you're not kicking it off well. And this is kind of like, you know, the proverbial cleaning up your car before you go out on your first date. So the elements of a great process, first and foremost, include the how-to element. Right? This is the baseline of pretty much any process, procedure, specific training that you're really working on, because you want to make sure that you've got the nuts and bolts of what you want somebody to do, right? Actual 360 delegation. The second really a frequently missed piece is the tactical piece. Meaning like what people need to be involved in this whole thing, right? Like we're not just processing things out in a silo. It'd be amazing if every single person had one process to run and that was pretty much it, but we're not McDonald's, right? That's not how we operate. We don't have the financial prowess. We aren't like that. And we really want to deliver high quality products. That's a 99.9%. I feel like why agency owners go into business is because, hey, I know how to do this, but I know how to do it a little bit differently than everybody else does it. So what are the tactical elements? What people need to exist? What systems are we using? Right? So if we have the process part here, we have the systems and the people, right? What do I need access to? What comes before or after this? Super helpful, right? Because then I can sit there and I can say, if I'm going to run this process, what needs to come before? Do they need to have paid their invoice before I start onboarding them? That's a super critical piece to know. You know why? Because if we're not going to start onboarding them until after they've paid their invoice, we're not going to be wasting man hours flipping those two things, right? And so it'll cost the agency money, it'll cost the agency time. And so we want to make sure too that we have that piece ironed out. And then the next is the strategy. And the reason I like the strategy, and you'll see here in a second, is why I call it the purpose statement, is it really like re-enlists why this is important and why we do it this way, right? Especially for the folks who are coming in, or maybe they are newer to the team, they don't really understand maybe why we're doing things a certain way. It can really anchor us in, okay, this is important because X, Y, or Z. And this is the strategy behind why we onboard so quickly. It's because we know that when someone makes a buying decision, the biggest douse of buyer's remorse comes right after they've made that purchase. And so what we want to do is we want to make sure that they have an incredible experience from day one, from minute one, and they feel taken care of and at home and supported by us. And so even just like that really quick statement can help anchor and really enlist somebody in your business to really help support you through managing this process. So let's talk about this really quick. This is an actual process from my onboarding process, which I actually really like. I love talking through this because I think onboarding overall can just create so many incredible, just unlock so many things for the owner. So the onboarding process, this is like kind of the administrative piece up here. So we have the status, the name of it, and the person responsible. Super helpful to kind of anchor this, right? And bonus points if you guys can have someone else listed here other than you. And if you do have you listed here, my hope for you is to try to craft a goal to get you out of this as soon as humanly possible. Get this, kind of documented and have somebody come and take at least just this piece on in your business. And perhaps this is getting jumbled with the, there we go. Again, administrative piece. Then we have the purpose here, and I can kind of zoom in on this. Ensure streamlined onboarding of all clients. We want to delight our clients and provide them exactly what they need to be successful on day one. super, super simple. It doesn't need to be this like really big high in the sky thing. I don't think I'm a very prolific writer or speaker for the most part. Like I'm mostly just, hey, look, I'm here to roll up my sleeves and get my hands dirty type of person. But ultimately what we want to do is we want to establish trust, right? When somebody starts to work with us, if we are in a position where we do what we say we're going to do, and this process seems really frictionless, we're establishing trust with our client, and that person is much more likely to play with us and get us what we need and be fully engaged, and then ultimately retain, save our business time, money, all those things. The next big thing.
Real quick, Alyson,
Yeah, go for it.
just something I think helps too, and I don't know if that's the purpose of this at all, but well, the literal purpose on there, I like it for the team members too, that they have some agency, like they understand what's going on instead of just like, hey, here's 10 bullet points, just go do this, right? If they
Exactly.
take the time to look at it, they understand what's going on in the bigger picture. So yeah.
Mhm. And such a great point. And they can begin to, again, just establish ownership over this, right? They feel like they have a hand in its creation a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So the tactical piece in this specifically is the reference section, right? Usually what we'll do is we'll create a screencast, like I mentioned before, to fold our time, and then we will link any additional elements that are needed. Inside of this specific process, I link to our project management service, which our project management tool, which we use Trello, a templated agreement that they can send over the clients, an invoice template that they can send over to the clients, those types of things. And then contextually, our clients need to pay at least the first installment of our engagement to be able to enact this process. And so we have an automation that fires over to our onboarding specialist about that specifically, so that she understands, okay, yeah, let's go for this now. We can start to onboard this client. So the other big thing that I'll mention here too is like processes. This is like definitely step number one, is getting this down on paper. But then as you start to go through some of these exercises, and as you start to go through this, really think through like, how do I amplify this? Right? So like, how do I create templates that make this process easier to run? How do I create automations that make notifications easier, that don't rely on me? And so as you start to do this feedback loop, right, consistently throughout, or the assessment loop, excuse me, consistently throughout the life cycle of your involvement in your business, you can constantly be identifying these things. Like, yeah, I wrote the onboarding process, but I still have to let my onboarding specialist know that a client has paid me, right? Because I'm connected to QuickBooks or whatever. And so then you want to just start to think through some of those things, right? And take that off of your plate, because not every single thing needs to be processed, right? Every single thing might need to be a template, a process, an automation, those types of things. But today, for our purposes, process. Now let's talk about the how-to. Screenshots. I've seen so many processes that are called processes that are just checklists. And I think that this is where the biggest misconception in the market currently happens, where we are in a position where we create this really great document and it really is just a checklist, and they don't see exactly what's going on. So the screencast mitigates that, but there are several different learning styles inside of our team. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that the team has what they need to be successful. So if they know what's happening in the first 5 or 6 steps, and they want to skip down to step number 7 just to get a really quick answer because maybe they haven't run this in a little while, they want to skip right down there, then they can do that. So make sure you're including screenshots and screen grabs of where things are and the important things that are happening while you're doing them. And then the completion filters. These are my literal completion filters for my onboarding process. I want a client card in Trello. I want a client card updated because they have given us all of their information. I want proper labels, and we have a labeling system inside of our project management tool that we use depending on what timeline they're on and all these different things. And then the client card is updated dynamically. We have some automation that hinges on what stage they are in our process. And so these are huge, huge, huge things, because automation doesn't fire, people don't get their emails, people don't show up to meetings. It's a whole thing, and it's a trickle down effect, and it definitely hurts us. So what I would love to do is I've only heard from Harry so far on what folks are working on. And I want to make sure that we are super clear on what's happening here and what elements we can be doing. But I would love to record something together with somebody. I think that would be super if someone would love to hop on and say like, okay, this is what I do and how I go through things. I personally feel like, honestly, this is the best way to just get things hammered out. So if anyone wants to raise their hand or do a Harry says happy to be in the hot seat.
Boom. Hey, I'm all for it. You
Yes.
know, first to speak gets the opportunity, I would say.
Yes, let's see really quick. Let me see if I have some power here.
Yeah, you should. If you want to promote him, if you go to
That's what I
participants, you should be able.
think. Yeah.
Cool. Since I clearly was unable to manage the same webinar.
Harry, I believe I've just promoted you to panelist. Beautiful. He's rejoining the webinar as a panelist.
There we go.
Harry, can you hear us?
Let's see.
I got you. I hear you and turning video on.
Ah, perfect.
Amazing. Nice to
There we
see you,
go.
Harry.
Good to meet you. Thanks.
All right. So you're working on onboarding.
Now,
Can you brief? Yeah, awesome. See, this is what I love. I love getting things knocked out. I'm totally like a roll my sleeves up type of person. So if anybody else watching or listening to the recording right now, if you're working on onboarding or really anything else, really what we want to do is we want to think through like what is step number one in this entire process, right? Let's not try to think about all of the elements of onboarding. Let's try to think about what is the first phase. And so Harry, do you want to just walk us through like what is step number one in your onboarding process currently as you're onboarding clients?
Alyson, it's a two-step process for me. First, I have to give you just 2 seconds of background. What I'm attempting to do is to sell review generation services only. That is, I will get reviews for you. I will get more reviews for you using your customer list, not fake reviews. I'll use your customer list. I'll get you more reviews. That's the service that I will either be selling only or will be selling first, either way. So the way I sell that is I put them into what really is, we call it 5-day proof of concept. Adam, you've heard of this before, the process, and I stole it from somebody else, but it's a good way to sell reviews. So basically you get a 5-day trial. Send me your list. I will then put your list into the software we use, which is somebody else's software. And in 5 days, we'll check back with each other. And I'm, of course, checking it like a mother hen every hour. But I will check back at the end of the week, Friday. And if you want to go forward and continue to get reviews, you can do it. At that point, he becomes a client. But I have to do the data, a lot of the data gathering and front end work to put him into the trial. So I'm really onboarding the guy partly at the initiation of the trial stage. Make sense?
Yes. All right, so you got the 5-day trial, and then I would say part of your onboarding is probably like an activation period, right? So you've got the 5-day trial itself, right? Getting them set up, all those things. And then you basically have just like repositioned the finalized sales, finalized piece of your sales process, right? In the onboarding process,
Right.
Which a lot of agencies do actually transparently, right? They'll do some discovery, they'll do some research, market research and all those things, which is totally great. So then you have your activation period. So what's step number one? Like, let's just say, for example, you're getting them set up inside of your trial. Do you guys have like an agreement that you get signed?
I don't
Do you have a way that?
No, it's all it's a handshake deal. Basically, what he has to do to comply, to become eligible for it, is he has to give me a list that has email address or cell phone number and or first and last name. So he's got to get me a sheet with that data in it. No sheet, I can't do anything without the sheet because I don't have his list. So getting his list is the first hurdle he's got to jump over.
Okay.
Also, that's my requirement because I'm going to put him through at least 3 test hurdles. He's not going to know their hurdles, but if he does what he says he's going to do 3 times, I know I want to work with him. But if he's one of those people that says, I'll get it to you tomorrow morning by 9 o'clock and you never hear from him again, or I have to start needling him to get the thing, I don't really want to work with the guy.
Y'all, Harry said something super profound just now, is that definitely audition your clients to work with you as much as they're auditioning you to work with them, because that will set you up. I mean, it's a relationship at the end of the day, right? No matter what it is, even if they are paying the bills or whatever is happening, it does not put them in a bigger position of power inside of your business. Like, this is your business.
I can absolutely promise you that the way they behave before the sale is exactly the way they'll behave after the close.
Love it.
I don't want the hassles.
All right, so list, then you're uploading that into a software that you've licensed from someone, right?
Right.
So we have software, and then how long? So you said 5-day period just to see if this works, right?
Yeah,
and so
right.
Are there troubleshooting efforts inside of this 5-day period that you're going through?
Sometimes there are. The list won't be clean. So we may have to process the list. Now,
Okay,
I don't just upload it. I send it to my VA and he sets all this stuff up. So we
love it.
don't have that. He's got it in his head and he knows how to do it. I don't even know how to do it, as a matter of fact, but he does it well and he does it repetitively. But obviously,
Speaking
There
of
you
red
go.
flags.
this sound familiar?
First thing we need to do is we need to get this onboarding process documented. Second thing,
got
Harry,
it.
reach out to your VA and have them go through the process for cleaning this list and get it recorded and
He's
sent over
actually
here.
started on that already. So I need to, but I haven't gone and looked and see what he's done. So I need to review it.
Amazing. Okay, so it looks like the three big pillars of kind of your onboarding process within kind of the 5-day trial are getting the list from your client, getting the information cleaned, and then putting it into the software. So those three things, I think, are probably where you're going to need to be focused. And I also think that your VA could likely take that over as well. That to me
Absolutely.
is pure data entry.
Absolutely.
You don't need to be uploading that list. I think where you can come in, Harry, and have the expertise is the deciphering of how that's going, right? And I think if you can stay in the more strategic elements of how you're onboarding your clients and getting them to that next step, it would be super helpful. So do you do any augmenting or anything like that as the list is uploaded during that 5-day period? You said you want to clean the list. Are those people just getting reviews? Are there anything that you can be doing to help speed that along or get your client better results?
What we do is when we first send it, we don't know how many to send. So I'm a little conservative about how hard I want to hit. Let me say, I'm a little conservative about the volume in terms of what Google might see. So I try to spread it out. When I first started doing this, I made a lot of mistakes, and we were sending out like 2 or 3 or 5,000 messages or emails at one time. And it caused problems. Fortunately, we didn't lose any clients, but it did cause problems. So now what we do is we do have a little tweaking we do. So we might, depending on how old the client's list is or how many in the list or whatever, and that's a judgment call right now. I don't really have enough data to do it correctly, but basically I'm looking at one right now. This guy's a wedding photographer. His list goes back to literally the 1990s. So some of the names in there are the email addresses and phone numbers are that old. Surprisingly, a lot of them still work. But I knew that we would get a smaller reply rate from that group. So I had to make a decision at first, number one, about how many we would start sending every day. And then if I don't get enough, like after a day or two, if I don't get enough responses, I jack that up maybe to 200 or 300 per day. So I'm doing a little bit of that monitoring and tweaking, but my VA has gotten to a point where he can do it. And I could, of course, just set benchmarks and say, look, let's make sure our guy gets at least 2 to 3 responses a day, 2 to 3 reviews a day.
Yes, that's exactly right.
That will thrill any client. They'll just love it.
And just like what you mentioned about doing what they say they're going to do, right? If you can root your first metric in something that you know you can deliver on because your process is proven to do that,
Right.
Not only will it considerably build the trust with your client, but it will also considerably increase the rate at which people do business with you after this
And that's
experience.
the whole purpose of doing it that way.
Right. So I think picking a couple of things I would do for you, Harry, first and foremost, is to pick those metrics, right? At the very least, you want 2 or 3, reviews for each of your clients, let's just say every day or every week, whatever the cadence is going to be there. So choose that first and foremost, then solve the other side of the equation. Say what needs to be true for that to happen. We need to have a list of X size, X quality, X frequency, whatever else. And then I additionally think, and especially, I know you said that it's kind of a judgment call and it might be inside of your head, but as you start going through and screencasting,
I can get it out. Right.
I think as you're talking through this, and it's something really important too to note, is that as you're screencasting, like dictate some of the things that are happening in your brain, because that's truly how you transfer knowledge onto your team, is to really set this up and say, I'm thinking about how old this list might be, how dormant some of these email addresses might be, how relevant this content might be to them now that they got married 10, 15 years ago, and now they probably don't need a photographer for special
maybe they
events.
their second marriage.
Yeah, perhaps. So yeah, right. We're thinking through some of those things. And I think until you kind of get that institutional knowledge spoken out loud and transferred to your team, it's going to just sit in your brain. And then those to-dos are going to live on your list.
Think that way. That's great advice. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Okay, great. So in terms of your onboarding process, do you feel good in terms of next steps and where you can record your screen today?
Yeah, I do. I mean, we know it. It's the part of our process we know the best right now because we've done a lot of them.
Amazing. Okay. So Harry, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks.
I'm going to open this up. So I saw Richard as well came in and posted
Yeah, square one.
No SOPs, no onboarding process. Most of my business has been word of mouth. Okay. Richard, do you want to elaborate on what process you are working on specific to our work together? And then we can maybe help you along with maybe the best place to start. So Richard, you want an SOP for creating SOPs? Is that right?
I'm guessing it sounds like he has no SOPs, no onboarding process. So he's just looking to get started and putting some processes in place.
I'm going to give you guys a gift here really quick. Sorry, just doing some of the administrative, pulling Harry back to an attendee, and then I'm going to share my screen really fast, and I'll put this link in the chat for you guys. You see my screen?
Uh-huh.
So this is exactly
Ooh.
what it looks like. It's a process for writing processes. And transparently, this is basically my IP. The only reason I am really super comfortable sharing this is because I know people hate writing processes, and I will always be in business because people love to outsource that sort of stuff to me. So all that to say, this is exactly how I run my team and exactly what they follow to write processes literally day in and day out. And so I have created, there's basically 3 levels, and I'm not going to bore you guys with some of the back to back or back and forth here, but there's how-to processes, there's management level processes, and then there's strategic level processes, right? This is a management process, right? This is basically how somebody comes in and manages the process of creating processes. And so it includes several SOPs basically on how to do this. And so, sorry, I'll just go through this really quick. So the big things here we want to take a look at is what we have in our toolbox. We want to create the reference section, the steps, the completion filters, the purpose statement, update the sharing settings, and then the additional resources. Like, how do I put this into action? And so what you want to do is you want to come in, and this is basic. We just do all of this stuff in Google Drive. I've ran my business on Google Sheets and Google Documents for the last 5 years, and I have ran lots of 8-figure businesses on the exact same thing. So there is really no reason why, from a documentation perspective, purely documentation, you need to be in any fancy tool. You need to be doing anything super crazy. Just write down what you've got going on here and make sure that it's available for your team. If you guys can see my entire screen here, this is my playbook. Right here on my Chrome, it's within 1 click of me being able to access it. I make sure when I onboard all of my team members that they do the exact same thing. So there's no reason to get fancy. Again, this is the process overview that we just went through, the important elements of this. And here's how to build a reference section. We want to include login information. We want to include screencasts. We want to include screenshots or anything that they need to be able to access. Here's how to pull in the process steps, right? We want to make sure to take screen grabs, pull in arrows and circles and that sort of thing. Make sure we pause the screen share recording that we're reviewing, for example, to take a look at, okay, where is this person at right now? Is this a milestone that we need to be hitting? And then I always love to pull in some check boxes because, in my opinion, if somebody's actually strategically working through this, they can kind of pull those things in. Completion filters, again, definitions of done. We kind of went over this as well. And then creating a really solid purpose statement. I always do this after, kind of like titling your book or your poem after you've written it, right? Because we really know, okay, this is super important because it includes X elements and Y purpose and all that stuff. And then again, it seems super monotonous, but sharing settings, right? Everybody wants to be able to, or needs to be able to access this in order to feel like they are able to pull everything in. So sharing settings again, and then we also link to the help center just in case for whatever reason they have issues logging into Google. So I'm going to share this with you guys. And then that way you have something that you feel that is like super, just a step by step, especially for like Richard, for example, who might not really have a place to start. Richard says, I have a programmer and a communications person that I'm working with. So Richard, can you just share with us like what the main service that you're providing is? Like if someone were to come to you and say, here, listen, I have $2,000, what would you give me?
Also,
Lead
real quick, I feel
generation.
like
Yeah.
people are Alyson, you're selling yourself short here, that there should be like the light shining upon that Google Doc and like, it sounds like how to create a process is like, for some, if you don't have a process, this is great. Just follow this until you feel like you need
Yes.
to add or edit. And like, this will get anyone started.
Totally. And here's hopefully this will, I'm going to drop the link in here. That way all of my keeners who are like silently following along can have this as well. All right. So Richard says lead generation, which is really, wait, do not let Bradley hear what Alyson said about G-Docs only. So we're talking about lead generation. So Richard, what platform do you specifically use for lead generation? Okay, so ads for lead generation. Okay, and have you sold any services so far, or are you kind of still just starting out? Not chat here, AdWords. Yes. Okay, perfect. So would you say that you walked through, I mean, were you successfully able to onboard your clients when you were doing it one-off? Perfect. So you do have a process. It's just not technically repeatable at scale yet, but you have one. And so something that I want to encourage all of my founders with is that like starting to do something and also optimize it at the same time is really, really challenging. And there's a ton of studies done about multitasking and how it actually is really ineffective in a lot of ways. There's like this really popular there's this really popular, I guess it's an exercise where they like have you write down one word and then they have you write down a second word. And then it takes you like 45 seconds to write each of the words. And they say, write the first letter of the first word and the first letter of the second word and the second letter of the first word and the second letter of the third word. And they're trying to demonstrate that like writing the word in and of itself just takes 45 seconds, but trying to do both at the same time actually takes you like 15x longer than it actually does. And so what I said before about establishing your baseline is the exact same truth when you go to document your processes for the first time. Just document how it's being done so that you can get your time back when that instantly becomes available, or when those funds become available based on our buyback rate exercise that we did earlier. If Richard starts to onboard clients, and even if it's a situation where he doesn't have anybody on his team yet, but he has something that he can consistently go through and hand that and say, hey, listen, I know it's not perfect, but here's how I've been doing it. I would love your suggestions on how we could improve this over time. That person doesn't feel, like they don't have autonomy over their work or that they don't have input into things, right? They're much more likely to come to the table with solutions, like I said before. Richard says, I'm a one-man band. One of my key reasons for joining, was to help scaling. Great. So what you want to do is you absolutely want to do the buyback rate. And you also want to do that time study. Like really, honestly, I think especially anyone who's really struggling to think through, okay, like what are my big processes? Do I even have any, right? First and foremost, document what is, not what should be at 50 million or whatever, right? We need to figure that problem out when it's presented to us, but we need to solve today's problem, which is getting onboarding off of our plate and getting it streamlined. And we can always improve this process over time. We can re-record our screen, or we can establish a person who can help us take this over and then have them be recording process, flows on how this stuff works. And so start where we are. Second big thing is that we want to make sure to be objectively, just assessing our week, right? So take a look at where you're spending your time. And Richard, I think that like you'll be amazed at some of the things that you're already doing that you don't even think. Don't see the link you shared.
Oh, maybe it went to, yeah, you can send it to me and I'll post it. I'm not sure what.
Let's see here. There we go. that should be able to make a copy for you guys. So you can have it in your own Google. You can like augment it and do whatever you'd like to do there. But anyway, so first and foremost, again, documenting what is, and then assessing your time very objectively around how you're spending your time and where you could potentially get some administrative things off of your plate. I've actually been part of projects in the past with some of my private clients who have literally been like, I don't have a process for anything. And I'm like, okay, talk to me about how you spend your day. And I'll just interview them. I'll be like, okay, what do you do first? What do you do second? And so perhaps if you have either a colleague or a team member or somebody on your side who can help you think through some of these things and just ask you those types of questions, well, what do you do first? Okay, well, what do you do second? That could be a helpful way to start to get some of those juices flowing around like what actually is happening and what you're actually doing around some of the processes that you have. I've also been a part of private projects where they just record their screen the entire time they're working. And then I come in and I'm like, just dictate out loud what they're doing and tell me what's happening and all those things as if I'm working alongside of them. And it's really, really helpful because they can kind of extract things. Oh, great. Richard says, love that. I have someone I could do that with. That's amazing. And so I think as long as we can enlist it doesn't need to be team members. It can be coaches. It can be, peers. It can be your wife, your husband. Like sometimes when I was first writing out how I was going to do some things, I said to my husband, I remember being like, if I can explain how this happens to you, like, then I can explain to somebody else who's a novice process writer how this can work. And so I very frequently, probably to his disdain, tell him a lot about the frameworks I'm working on and those types of things. And it's a really, really helpful thing because they're completely outside of your business, right? So a lot can, I think, be helpful there. What else? I would love to help some other folks through some of the things that they're working on and hear about some of the specifics around what processes you're working on. I think ultimately, right, what we want to do is we want to de-frictionalize getting this done as soon as humanly possible.
Yeah, definitely. If anybody else has some other processes, I mean, I am all for onboarding given the issues I was talking about at the beginning, but if anybody else has some other stuff they're working on, whether I know AdWords had been mentioned, but fulfillment, anything like that, it sounds like Alyson would be able to give you a hand here. Let's see.
Yeah, I don't.
Oh, there's a lag here.
Let's see. We've got Justin, Rebecca, George.
Well, give her one of Bradley's flowsters. Yeah. Well, I've got one, Alyson. If nobody else steps up, I would love your input on some reporting, which is something I've been wanting to kind of take up. Like I do a monthly walkthrough, but I personally do it with clients, and it's not the end of the world. But I've been like, this would be nice if it was something I could not do myself. So if nobody else is dying to step up, if you could talk to that, I'd certainly appreciate it. And I'm sure it's something else that other people deal with.
I was going to say, I'm sure someone else here is having that problem. And reporting, Harry just said reporting is a chore. So there's basically two things that I like to take a look at when I look at reporting. And ultimately, it kind of comes back down to the same operational Venn diagram that I talked about before. And I'll just share my screen again. Let me know if we can see my iPad. Oh, here we go. Okay. So when we talk about this concept here, when we do reports, this exact same thing needs to be in place, right? We have our systems. So really what we need to be asking is this collecting the right data, right? Like, do we have visibility into what we need visibility into to be able to provide a really solid report? And do we have a process for identifying red flags or opportunities, right? Like where do we augment? And then who is responsible for making those calls, those judgment calls, right? And how is that person interacting with the system, right? Are they jumping in and pulling a report, or are they jumping in and really deciphering the data and then pulling the meaningful metrics into a report, manually instead, right? And so we really wanted to just kind of come in and think about like the 360 way that this report is supported or the way that the information is accurate. The additional thing is that if reporting, for example, like I know lots of agencies struggle with time tracking, and that's like a whole separate, probably like a workshop and everything. So many of my agency owners are like, I can't get my team to track time and I don't want to track time. And it's such a big thing, right? But what I start to ask them, right, is this exact same flow is that, okay, if the people are inputting the data into the systems, we need to ask ourselves, is that data accurate? And then if the systems are informing our process for how we charge our customers and how we price our projects and how we forecast and all of that stuff, right? Is this information, the source of this data, really accurate? And how can we position it in front of people to make the best decision possible? So Adam, when you're sitting down inside of, whichever tool you are using, do we feel really confident that at the very least, this piece is true, right? That you have good data to deal with?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, amazing.
Yeah.
And do you
Not
feel...
to just take away any of the problems, but yeah, I get it. It's pulled automatically, so I feel good about it.
Amazing. Okay, so then the second
Yep.
piece of this would be, is there a way that you consistently identify red flags and opportunities?
Good question. No, at this point, it's still me. So I guess that's the Adam reviewing it. I slim it down. So basically, a little bit of context, get like 30 slides output with various data. I get it slimmed down to 5, and then I go through it. And that's the process that I'm in, talking to my process or my project manager and explaining how I do it. But that's where I'm at right now.
Okay, so what degree do you feel like you could distill at least the top 20% of things down? Like some of the things I really work on with my founders is like, actually Dan Martell says this too. He said 80% done by someone else is 100% freaking awesome. And I love that quote because like, yeah, we stand in our own way of this perfection mindset, and it's like our business, our brand, all those things. But a lot of times when we start to pop the hood open, we're saying the same stuff consistently, right? And it's really that like cream of the crop there that we really need to be focusing on. So like, what are the most common red flags or opportunities that you're seeing from these reports? Do you find that you're saying similar things quite often?
Yes, definitely. I'm thinking about it right now, and just having recorded one this morning or last night it was. And so definitely there's probably, I think what you're saying is true, probably the 80-20, and not to get to dodge it, but there's probably 80% of it I could probably start to delegate relatively quickly, or at least distill it down so I could make a quicker decision or not have to do it myself.
Yeah, so so let's think about this in kind of an action step for you, Adam. So like, let's just say the PM takes on 20% of this week and does like the top level things, the things that happen all the time, like, right, the stuff that's really, really easy to just kind of keep swiping through and make sure. And then maybe this week as well, Adam can do like 80%. And then let's just commit to trying to flip this, right, before the end of the quarter. And then that way, Adam, you can come in and address some of those non-negotiables. It's just like handing off your inbox, right? You can hand off your inbox, but you're really not handing off your inbox. Richard Branson didn't hand off his inbox, right? He has an assistant that does a lot of stuff for him. I think his like main assistant has been with him for like 12 years or something. And literally he has her with him all the time. They do like meetings over breakfast every single day. And the only thing she talks to him about is stuff that she cannot physically handle, which is actually not that often because she's been with him for so long and she's seen so many things. And so really what I challenge is like, you can't always 100% offboard every single thing, especially if it relies on some of the big decisions that you need to make for your organization or some of the big insights that you can give to your clients. And especially at a younger stage in your agency, right? You just want to be in a position where you can realistically pour into those relationships and grow them over time. So if we can just commit to doing some of those things, I also challenge you, Adam, to think through how your PM can review the trainings that you've already recorded and maybe have that person come back and say, hey, what do you think are the biggest things that we constantly see with clients? Like, where do you feel like you could come in and maybe have them craft a list of some
Definitely.
of these?
I love it. And I mean, she came at me with one, and I bring this up because it kind of blew my mind, but it was part of this where I was like, I need to communicate more. A lot of this, right, is some communication back and forth. And instead of just taking it on, she had asked me, could you explain how you do your decisions on split tests where you don't have like statistically significant data? I was like, oh my God, why did I not
Good
talk to her
question.
about this? Right?
Good
Because it was
question.
like,
Yeah.
I had to make a choice. How do you do it? You're just doing this. What are you doing? So
Yeah.
this is more I could deal with. So yeah.
That's so amazing. And like ultimately too, what you're doing is you're building another mind, right? That hive mind I talked about, right? You're building another independent mind that's in service of the whole. And I think at the end of the day, your organization can up level on the knowledge that that person is learning from just letting them take the reins.
Yep.
You know, I hope that's encouraging to a lot of you because ultimately, like at different levels in the organization, you're going to struggle with delegating different things, right? Right now, it might be just taking over bits of your inbox. It might be data entry. It might be some of the lower hanging fruit, right? You might just be, starting to work that muscle of delegating and documenting and feeling like you have enough information to give somebody to do a really good job. And a lot of it might be scared. Like literally behind me, I'm working on reorganizing all of my closets and my new office is being built. But if I opened this closet right now, all of my guest sheets and pillows would be like very haphazardly organized. And this is from an operations person. Like all my other closets are very much underway for being organized. And it's my like Q1 project at my home. But it's really revealing, right? To like pull the curtain open and like show somebody who's either been on your team for a while or is new to your team that like things aren't always perfect and they're not always organized. And so I just encourage you to approach this like a human being, right? Be like, hey, listen, this is my stuff and this is how this is going right now. And I am super, super into collaboration and improvements on this process. And so it doesn't need to be perfect and it doesn't need to be done 100% of the way. And we need to be all right with that because I think ultimately what we're doing is we're sabotaging our growth if we're not letting this come off of our plate.
Definitely. Love it.
Yeah. All right, I want to help others and I want to make sure that I am serving y'all. So please, 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 if you're working on processes, dump the like stuff that you're working on in the chat, or if you have any additional questions that you want to just bring up, I kind of want to leave the last of this for anyone who's working on, any questions operationally, how to delegate things off of their plate. I'm super excited and happy to serve.
Yeah, I'll give it a minute here. I know there's always a delay. See if anyone wants to, and I'm just going to put it in here because we will send the replay out, but this is the best part about being live on these is that you get the chance to,
Yes. Yes.
So if you were here, you would get a chance to get some insight from Alyson, but if you're watching the replay, it's still going to be good. But if you join on the live ones, you can get some extra goodie stuff sometimes.
Yeah, of course. And I have folks can reach out to me fairly simply and just send me an email if you're having issues or you're working through this and whatnot. If you are able to, and I want to just offer this as kind of a bonus to the community here. If you record your screen, I'll write you a process. Send it to my email, Alyson@operationsagency.com. I'll write it for you. It'll be done within 2 business days, guaranteed. And you can see the power of having something like this inside of your business. And I just want to really help defrictionalize that for you because I know a lot of people are really, really struggling with this. And to me, and especially, right, you start a business and you help folks out because something comes really easily to you. But this is so, so easy. And my hope is to just make sure to lower the barrier. So if you'll do the homework, if you'll record your screen and send it to me at Alyson@operationsagency.com, I will personally document this process for you.
Wow. All right. Well, yeah, done. I think you just got 10 emails from Harry. So
I will limit it to one process, but it
There
will
we
be
go.
good. It will be a good process because I think ultimately what we want to do is we want to identify that one thing, right? That one thing that's really dragging us down in our day-to-day and in our things. And honestly, I think ultimately, like you're thinking of client onboarding 100%. If you're thinking of like updating or preparing proposals, right? Like that's a big one. Lots of people really struggle with things like that. And I think creating templates and creating consistency around some of your offers is a really good first big step there. But additionally speaking too, like the preparation of your proposals and your agreements and sending your invoices and all of the administrative activation and onboarding elements of how you work with clients, those really do need to be documented at the very least so that when your business comes to a revenue point or a paying you point to where this becomes really, really accessible to you, right, via your buyback rate, you start to know, okay, this is how much I can afford to pay to get this off my plate.
Nice. Well, Alyson, while you're on a roll about sending stuff to you, obviously wait a couple minutes, see if anyone else feels like hopping in. But I mean, I want everyone else to know where else can they find you. I mean, this is big self-promo time. Like, what else can people do, right? I mean, if there's no more questions, I want to make sure too people understand exactly, what you can do for them, and what you want them to do. I know you have templates. You work with agencies. I mean, just go for it.
Cool. Yeah. So I work with agency owners predominantly, but I do work in a lot of different industries as well, kind of in my fun side hustle days. But most of the time, what I'm doing day in and day out with my team is documenting processes and creating a frictionless system to do that. So we talked about creating a Google for your business as the easiest way for your team to get results on your behalf. That is basically what we do. We have a service that's like Design Pickle for processes, right? We just basically come alongside the organization and defrictionalize that process of creating processes. Super exciting. So you can go grab my operational toolkit at operationsagency.com. It's the first thing on our homepage. That is the best way if you are just getting started. So for folks like Richard and Harry, who are in a position where we're just starting to think through processes, we're really starting to gain traction around our offers, and really it's just us or us and like a couple of VAs, that is a great place to begin on kind of your documentation journey. I think that ultimately what we want to do is we want to make sure that things are set up for success. Now, if you want to crack open my templates, that's also at operationsagency.com. Those are a paid feature, but what I will say is that not all templates work for all agencies. We do have a lot of different types of templates in there, so you feel like you have a really good library to see what maybe some other agencies are doing in terms of SOPs and how they run specific things. And so that's a really interesting option for an agency who might be in a position of trying to like figure out what other folks are doing to be successful. But for the most part, I'm fairly accessible. We have a YouTube channel too. I mentioned that before, 3-minute ops tips. I love doing those. I personally really like short, quippy pieces of content. I'm always listening to everything at 2x and all the stuff and just like consuming content like while I'm doing other things. And I know I said multitasking isn't a good thing, but I also just always have my AirPods in. And I think that's like that's not technically multitasking, but anyway. So the
wait a
YouTube
second.
channel,
So you're a normal human being?
yeah, exactly. I'm totally human, I promise. I'm not just a hologram. But yeah, so the YouTube channel is amazing. That's how I a lot of my folks who interact with my content often, they always say, oh, I loved your YouTube tips. So I was like, great. So that's super fun. Oh, awesome. Harry said SOP videos in Alyson's inbox. I love it, Harry. We will get that happening for you. And seriously, anyone else, we love documenting process. We love showing folks how good we are at what we do. We really do believe we are the best in the world at documentation and making a frictionless system for that. So transparently, that's my most exciting thing, is getting things documented for my agencies.
Very nice. All right. Well, I put the links in there for Ops Agency and the YouTube
Thank
channel.
you.
Actually, I need to go subscribe. I was just like running around grabbing the links. So
Thank you.
awesome. Well, I don't see anything else, but Alyson, any parting shots? Anybody got anything? I guess, yeah, this will be it before we wrap it up.
Yeah. If anybody has any questions, again, I'm super easy to get in touch with. My name's Alyson, Alyson at operationsagency.com. If you have specific questions, if you want to send me over the screencast that you worked on for today's session, either live or on the recording, I would love to pour into your business and help you get this figured out. If you want to, you can also book a call with me if you have some specifics, or you feel like you want to activate Design Pickle for processes in your business and you're like, I really just have been waiting for this. Like, book a call with me and we can kind of discuss how that could work for your agency. But other than that, I just had a pleasure. I had a really good time, and it was a pleasure being with you, Adam. And I just really appreciate you bringing me in. And I love talking shop and helping people get unstuck. So,
well, thank you. I mean, I'd love to have you back sometime. This is super important stuff. Like we said at the beginning, I always feel bad because I'm a process. I understand how important they are, and even I sometimes am just like, I don't want to do this. But the future payoff is so big for this. So really appreciate you, and that you're so into this, and that you love helping people with it. So thank you for taking the time out of your day to share all this and help people out.
Yeah, of course. I will come back anytime. But yeah, again, have a good day, guys. And thanks again for all of your time. I'll end this, I think, because I'm the host.
But thanks
But
for doing my job as well.
no problem. But yeah, thanks again, everybody. And let me know if you guys need any support.